It is Monday, June 30th, and we have a big show today. New unsurfaced video of Zohran Mamdani admitting what the end goal is of this project he's a part of. Wait till you see this. Also, brand new tariff data coming in. Revenues collected thus far from Trump's tariff policy shooting to the moon. Revenues spiking. A new source of revenue for the federal government while inflation is falling. I don't know. Does it mean all the experts were wrong again? We'll look at it. And we're hearing a big change is coming soon at the Federal Reserve. Trump will be replacing Jerome Powell, and sooner than expected, and more stories as well from around the country. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing if you appreciate these regular updates.
What the purpose is about this entire project, it's not simply to raise class consciousness, but to win socialism. And obviously raising class consciousness is a critical part of that.
Never before seen footage of New York City's newest mayoral nominee, Zoran Mamdani, being released yesterday. This video appearing to have been recorded months ago during a Zoom call he had trying to raise money for his campaign. Politicians, they do this a lot. They hold calls with rich donors trying to convince them to support their campaigns. Well, on this video call, we don't know who he had the call with, but we do know he let it rip, admitting the bigger goal, the end goal, he calls it, of this project. Roll the tape.
What the purpose is about this entire project, it's not simply to raise class consciousness, but to win socialism. And obviously raising class consciousness is a critical part of that. But making sure that we have candidates that both understand that and are willing to put that forward at every which moment that they have, at every which opportunity that they are given. We have to continue to elect more socialists, and we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it is the end goal of seizing the means of production, where we do not have the same level of support at this very moment. And what I want to say is that it is critical that in the way that we organize, in the way that we set up our work and our priorities.
All right, let's stop it right here. What we just heard is pretty remarkable. Something no American politician has ever said, ever. Admitting the goal is to seize the means of production. Bernie Sanders, for instance, was very careful not to cross that line, because once you do, you're no longer a democratic socialist. You can't call yourself that anymore. You're a Soviet socialist, a Cuban socialist. There's nothing democratic about centralized government controlling capital and the means of production. This is like such a bigger, detailed discussion. Let's just finish the video first.
And our priorities, that we do not leave any one issue for the other, that we do not meet a moment and only look at what people are ready for, but that we are doing both of these things in tandem, because it is critical for us to both meet people where they're at and to also organize for what is correct and for what is right, and to ensure that over time we can bring people to that issue. The ramifications of victory here is the difference between life and death for so many of our brothers, sisters, and family beyond the binary across this borough of Queens. It's the difference between having cash bail anymore or not. It's the difference between having sex work be decriminalized and
sex work decriminalized.
And with every battle that we fight as socialists, we need to remember what the stakes are and ground ourselves in them, and why those stakes are important and critical to us as individuals.
Oh, decriminalize sex work. Why don't we have government-run sex work? Stay consistent, Zoran. Look, I've been noticing something very interesting with this guy. He's using Donald Trump's political playbook. Admit everything. Tell the unvarnished truth. Never get caught in a lie, because you just say it the way it is. This has been Trump's superpower for years, for almost 10 years. Trump's beat the political establishment by doing this. Dems have been notoriously awful at this. We saw it with Hillary, with Biden, Kamala, all of them. Always so careful not to say the wrong thing. Everyone knowing they are dishonest. Biden was a corpse. They tried to hide that from us. Kamala, dumb as a rock. They tried to hide that from us. This guy, finally, a real contender, and he's unabashedly honest with his beliefs. That's what it seems like.
So when people say democratic socialist, right? And I'm curious what you think this means. I mean, do you like capitalism?
No, I have many critiques of capitalism. And I think ultimately the definition for me of why I call myself a democratic socialist is the words of Dr. King decades ago. He said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism. There must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And that's what I'm focused on, is dignity and taking on income inequality. And for too long, politicians have pretended that we're spectators to that crisis of affordability. We're actually actors, and we have the choice to exacerbate it, like Mayor Adams has done, or to respond to it and resolve it, like I'm planning to do.
In my opinion, if you don't like capitalism, you shouldn't be in America. Go somewhere that doesn't have it. The reason is simple. America is a free country. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, everything about this country was structured to have as little government control as possible. We're not a democracy. We're a republic. The founders did that. Why? To prevent centralized control. Each state has its own constitution. We're like 50 countries in one. So when you hear people say socialism's anti-American, that's why. Socialism is the opposite, the complete 180-degree opposite of the point of America. Socialism centralizes power. America's about the decentralization of federal power, which is why our government privatizes everything. Take the space race. They tried centralizing space, and look what happened. It failed miserably. They privatized it, contracted it out. Now we have SpaceX and a dozen other companies competing, trying to master it.
This isn't just about Mr. Mamdani as an individual. This is about the message that the people of New York City are trying to send to our party.
I think my concerns are well known, but obviously there are many in the Jewish community who are worried about his positions.
I'm not a socialist, and I don't believe in socialism.
What's your reaction to what happened in New York this week with Zoran Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, winning the nomination for mayor? Does that concern you at all?
Their election is still in process, but congratulations to the nominee for the Democratic Party. My focus politically is strictly winning the House, so that's where my focus is.
Non-committal, Nancy Pelosi on that one.
But what's interesting...
Now, I should say, people do have critiques of capitalism today, but they're not critiquing raw capitalism. They're pointing out the failures in our system, crony capitalism. That's what they're really talking about, which in recent decades has exploded. Crony capitalism's when success in business doesn't depend on the quality of your product or your service. You could have the best company in the world, but if you don't know the right people, it doesn't matter. It's built on close relationships between business leaders and government officials rather than on fair competition. It involves favoritism, where your friends in government create specific policies like subsidies, tax credits, regulations to benefit your company over the competition, which is what we have in large part today. You can see this in real time. Elon Musk, go on X right now, look at Elon Musk's feed. He is furious right now that Trump's doing away with his EV tax credits and his subsidies in the BBB, his big, beautiful bill. Trump's saying, why do Americans have to pay for your business to be successful? It should be fair. If you have the best product, Elon, then it won't matter. Personally, I think Elon does have the right product, but he's still very angry right now. Look, the answer to these problems isn't throwing away the best economic system the world's ever seen for a failed econ system that's proven to fail over and over again. It's why China, communist China, threw out their Soviet-style socialism system. Even the Chinese realize it doesn't work. Well, Zohran Mamdani says, oh well, we want it, and we're doing it.
It is the time for our city to be reborn, a new city with a new politics.
And another story, new tariff numbers coming out of U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP. That's the federal agency that collects the tariffs that Trump's imposing. And these numbers, folks, pretty mind-blowing. Check this out.
Look how much we've been collecting in revenues. And I did this in part because Wilfred's here and he can talk about the UK trade deal. But just this is the monthly numbers. And they have gone up a lot. June is actually set for another big increase of $27 billion. That is money coming into U.S. coffers from tariffs. We are collecting a lot of revenue. So far, guys, $121 billion has flowed into the U.S. government since the start of the fiscal year. It's still a tiny portion of the overall revenues that the U.S. government gets, but it's increasingly a lot. Especially, we haven't seen it in terms of the consumer paying off higher inflation.
Over $120 billion collected into the government's coffers since Trump rolled his tariffs out, way higher than expected. And if you look at this, Trump's rolling these tariffs out. His idea, his end goal, is to eliminate income tax in this country, federal income tax. Do you see the complete 180 in philosophy here? Trump's idea is the federal government should stay out of your business completely. Trump's end goal is to completely eliminate income taxes, instead taxing the rest of the world, not itself. We're already seeing him do this with the BBB. If that passes tomorrow, we're going to have no more tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and at the same time, inflation is falling, not rising from this tariff policy, which is why we're hearing a big change is coming to the Federal Reserve. Trump now planning to replace Jerome Powell. Too late, Jerome Powell, much sooner than expected. We were hearing a lot of talk over the last few days about this. And then this morning, Carolyn Leavitt delivering a big fat message to Powell at the White House press briefing, presenting the letter that Trump just sent to Too Late Powell. Watch this.
And if you look at this chart, this is a chart of all of the interest rates of many countries throughout the world. At the top is Switzerland. They're only paying a quarter for interest rates. Cambodia, Japan, Denmark, Thailand, Botswana, Barbados, Taiwan, Bulgaria, Cuba, Sweden, Morocco, Cabo Verde, South Korea, Algeria, Canada, Albania, Libya, Malaysia, China, New Zealand, Trinidad and Tobago, Czechia, Bolivia, Australia, Costa Rica, the Bahamas, Kuwait, Papua New Guinea, Bosnia, United Kingdom, and the UAE are all paying lower interest rates than the United States of America, which has one of the hottest and strongest economies in the world. The president sent this note to the Fed chair. It says, Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost, and there is no inflation.
Yeah, this is important. A lot of the critics are saying Trump wants the Fed to lower rates to boost the economy. That's why he's pressuring Jerome Powell. He just wants the stock market to go higher. He wants the economy to get juiced. And I'd say, sure, that's a byproduct of them lowering rates. But the real reason is because every month the Fed keeps rates artificially high, it's costing this country billions, hundreds of billions of dollars in interest. Trump said so. Explained this in his own Trumpian way last week. Watch what he said.
About $600 billion, all because the guy doesn't want to lower the rates. He's doing the service, a very disservice. And then he goes up and talks about, I'd like to see costs come down. You know, he gets up and he does his little thing for 5 minutes, and he goes out and he goes back to the beach. He goes, I'd like to see costs come down. Well, he could lower the interest cost by $900 billion a year. All he has to do is lower rates. And everybody's saying, I was watching some of the business shows today, and they're saying, you know, Trump's right. He should really be cutting. The country's doing well. We have no inflation. Now, despite him, we're doing great. But if we got the rates down, we would be a rocket ship. So I think that'll be it. And I just want to thank everybody.
What he's saying is under Biden and the then Treasury Secretary Yellen, they refied trillions of dollars of our debt, and they added $10 trillion. Biden added $10 trillion to our national debt. Yellen financed that $10 trillion largely with short-term notes, 2 years and 5-year notes. Those bonds are now expiring. We need to refi that debt in the coming quarters. If Powell doesn't lower the rates, the U.S. will end up paying almost 5% interest on that Biden debt instead of 4% or 3%. Each point in interest is huge money. That $10 trillion Biden added at 5% interest, that's $500 billion a year that we have to pay in interest. Interest, just interest. That's insane. Trump's saying we need the rates lowered. Yeah, I'd agree with them. This is why we elected him. He's cognizant about all these things. Do you think Kamala Harris would have even cared? I don't think so. But hey, who cares what I think? Let me know what you think. Tell me in the comments. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.